There are two more questions. One is from May. I think she raised twice. So the COVID situation may prolong a little longer, so maybe for another few years. I think the education department should seriously look into that, perhaps introducing or adapting a bit by bit. Love to hear from the panel of speakers. Also, she's saying it's great for us parents to know about the support offered by the government and different organizations. Oh, no, sorry, that's another one. So, another thing is the kids are growing fast. By putting on hold of the new action items, does it mean we'll leave the newcomer kids to continue struggling on their own? So I'm not sure, is that what you're asking about the on hold ones? I don't think there's anything on hold, right?
No, not really. I mean, the things that would have been put on hold during COVID would have been introducing anything new. It was supports were still offered for students. And even in the spring when we were working from home, Peru worked very hard to with EAL teachers to make sure supports were still provided. So things that might have been paused would be like conferences and professional learning opportunities for teachers, things that we couldn't really go do in the same way, but we are still moving things forward and students are still receiving appropriate supports right now, recognizing that it's not perfect everywhere, but things didn't stop. It's just we weren't introducing, for example, Peru's not able to bring in groups into the department to develop a new resource, for example, but at the same time, we're still putting in supports. So last year we did in Halifax, put in Peru, you can correct me or add, but we did put in funding for additional EAL teachers in Halifax. We just finished in terms of the government now recently, the budget will soon be announced and we expect that there will be additional funding even in next year's budget for EAL, FAL teachers. So things like that continued. It was just some of the work that would have had us going into schools. And I should say, Monica, you mentioned that as well around being told people couldn't go into schools. We do have COVID guidelines, but physicians and occupational therapists and other interventionists would be considered essential visitors during COVID. So as long as they're following public health protocols, they should still be going into schools. And Monica, you have given us good examples around how the process works. You start with your classroom teacher, and if there's questions and concerns that aren't being addressed, then it's the principal or the parent navigator or the EAL teachers, but it should never stop there. If you're still not getting the response, then at the regional center, so at the central level, there's people that we can connect with. So if people get stuck at the school level, there are other mechanisms or other ways to continue to access supports. And for now, Peru can connect you, but also the parent navigators that came to our last presentation would also be able to help with that. Peru, did you have anything to add to that question?
No, I think you covered it, Annie. Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So I think there's one more question is there any educational support to parents provided during weekends?
I wonder if Achala would be able to speak about the maybe YMCA supports as well that they might have available on the weekends. And then we have Cassia that has raised her hand. You're muted now, Achala.
So sorry about that. Thank you, Maria. Yes, there are a lot of activities at the YMCA, Center for Immigrant Programs. Active Living has programs for adults, older adults and young adults, outdoor activities and other sessions in the center. And also we have programs for youth outreach is programs. They have programs over the weekend for young adults, youth, and children. There's Saturday study skills for from primary to grade 6 classes. That's Saturday morning, start in 2 hours, 10 o'clock till 12, that program. And also there are events happening every weekend. So please, maybe you can contact the YMCA Center for Immigrant Programs and find out more information. And if you contact me, then I can pass the information to you as well. There's flyers that I can forward. And yeah, thank you.
So before I pass the mic to Cassia, I also want to mention that we are preparing a resource bag for everybody who attends the session. So I think that we have women that are registered in our women support group, and it is these women that will receive that information bag. But I believe that if you are attending the 3 consecutive sessions, we might be able to also provide you with this resource bag. You just have to contact Nina, our coordinator. And so if there is no more responses in terms of the question that was just posed from the speakers, I'm going to pass the mic to Cassia, who has also raised her hand. Okay, Cassia, the room is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Maria Jose. Thank you to all the presenters. I wanted to reiterate for what already was said. Wonderful presentations, and huge thank you to Monica for sharing her journey with her son, Nico. I am actually a returning mom. I've taken part in this forum last year. My son.
We lost you. We lost you, Cassia. So if you could go back when we finally have you back, if you could go back a little bit, because we lost you.
Right. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, so wanted to say thank you to all the presenters, and especially to Monica for sharing her journey with her son, Nico. I had taken part in this forum last year. My older son, Kuba, who is now 9, we were in the process of getting him assessed at that point for autism. Later that year in July, he got his diagnosis, so we know now that he's autistic. And basically, I think we've been pretty lucky in terms of having supports in place at school from teachers. He had been very blessed with amazing teachers, like classroom teachers. It has been a little bit of a struggle with other supports, having other supports in place. He is autistic, however, he's very highly functioning. So he's not aggressive. It seems that EPAs are in place when kids are aggressive. That's my kind of overarching observation, which I understand because it's a concern for safety of others as well. So this year there was another autistic kid in his class, and there was an EPA in place for both of them. However, that little girl moved to English class probably in December, January, and that EPA actually went with that girl to English class. So there's no EPA in place. And also he's in French immersion, and there are no French-speaking EPAs, which I think shouldn't be the case, because if the language of instruction is French, then EPA should be able to speak French as well. I've been trying to, lobby for him to have some sort of support, maybe even a couple hours a week. He really struggles with group work, with social I guess, social and emotional issues and so on, and mostly with group work. And it is very hard for the teacher to support him when she also has, 30, 20, however many, 28 other kids. He also used to get support from speech language pathologist. He stutters, but his stuttering is very, like, it comes and goes. And usually when the SLP sees him, it's really good. So then they say, like, no, there are no issues, like he doesn't need support. And I'm like, yes, he does, because there's, out of 10 days, maybe there are 8 that he really stutters, and he struggles with that at school. And it is really hard to convince both those support people and also like just like school in general, to have those in place, because he's high functioning, right? So I guess my question to Ani is, what are the rules around having EPAs in place? And yeah, and we've been getting some support from counselors at school also, and that's, well, it just brain fart. That person that is responsible for basically, like, all the accommodations in school, special education teacher or whatever. But I'm just wondering, like, what are the guidelines? If Ani could speak to that about educational assistance, and yeah, just that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone for organizing that. It's wonderful.
Thanks, Kathy. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah.
So for teacher assistant, oh, sorry. Do you want me to respond, or should we go to another question?
Yes, please respond, and then we can go to the next question.
Okay, I'll be quick on this, but we are revising their teacher assistants is the word we use provincially, but EPAs and HRCE. They are right now, we do have guidelines, and they are allocated based on students with medical needs and safety. So they're not trained to provide educational programming for students. So though for many students on the spectrum, especially the younger ones with that emotional regulation and social communication, often if there's an EPA available to help in the classroom, they may be there, but they're not assigned for that specifically. So, and our goal with EPAs is to really have the students gain the skills that they need so they can be independent and they don't have that EPA assigned directly to them. So an EPA might be in a classroom, and like the example you gave, Cassie, I work with a few students and be there to, kind of be in and out as needed. So there are guidelines. Each regional center goes through an allocation process and would look at whether a student needs an EPA for a medical need. So we may have a student who has medical tasks or healthcare tasks that an EPA provides to them, or a student who, for safety reasons, might be a student who would leave the school and so needs an EPA with them. But schools really look to other supports for students before having that EPA allocated. But I know in terms of the calls we get at the department, and we work very closely with those regional centers, it is probably one of the most frequently talked about and asked about service of how we allocate those TAs. So we are revising the guidelines. There is a draft in place, and part of what the regions have asked us to do is look at how they're allocated. And that committee that I mentioned to you about, the made up of those different parent groups, they're asking for that too, because they want consistency, because it seems like from the parents' perspective that my child in one school might have access to an EPA, and if they were to move to another school, they wouldn't. So we want to really start to provide very clear guidelines so parents know how those EPAs are allocated. So we could have a whole other meeting just on teacher assistance and sharing those guidelines and that allocation process. And by next year, we'll have those finalized, and it might be a really good idea. But in the meantime, we'll share a draft, and you can have a look at the draft and the allocation. But again, it is through that lens of safety and medical and behaviors there. And, so if we have a student who needs a lot of support to regulate their behavior, they may be assigned an EPA. But if it's around communication and other pieces, then there's other staff within the building that should be providing that support because they have the training. EPAs don't necessarily have that very technical training to do that work.
Thank you, Annie. So I'm going to, Toby has raised her hand.
Thank you, Annie.
Hi, actually our name is not Toby, but
That's the only name I could read.
yeah, so I'm helping my friend Gao Wei. Gao Wei?
Hi, Kawe. Nice to meet you.
I'm helping her to translate her situation. So
My daughter is
so it will take some time for me to translate if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So her daughter is 7 years old and she's studying in a private school. So
醫院嘅診斷就話都幾肯定佢有 ADHD。
So they went to see doctors and recently it's very possible that the daughter has ADHD. It's not diagnosed yet until a few more visits. 跟住就
老師就唔係幾好啦，感覺上已經放棄佢啦，話教唔到佢啦，唔知點教到啦。
And then the head teacher of her daughter almost literally said she would give up on her daughter because she doesn't know how to handle the situation and she didn't get enough support in the school.
叫佢轉校，又
They
叫
asked
佢
her to
homeschool。
the teacher asked her to change her school or doing homeschooling, which she got away. It's not possible to provide that. So she's wondering what she can do as like a newcomer and like she needs support in English herself, but she has to handle her daughter's situation.
同埋阿女嘅專注力都好差。
And her daughter's she cannot concentrate because of the ADHD. So she cannot concentrate well, and that affects her study.
英文都要。
The daughter needs help in ADHD
同埋個語言英文，佢頭先咁樣
language
講。
at the same time. So I'm just wondering how she might get support because she's in the private school as well as a newcomer and ADHD problem. So yeah, thank you.
So I'll start, but then maybe somebody else will jump in with more information. So private schools don't fall under us in provincial government. So I have limited ability to work with the private school to require them to provide the supports. I did put, oh, sorry.
I'm just trying to translate to her. You can keep going. I guess I can mute myself for a little bit.
Okay. In the chat, I put the email for our learning disability specialist. Her name is Margaret. If you have access to email, and if we can email, Margaret is a psychologist and can provide some, I think, some information and some help as a place to start. If you were looking to come into the public school system, we would have supports, but Margaret can help with some strategies and some ideas, and could at least have a phone call with your child's teacher at the private school to see what strategies, because there are strategies. There's a psychologist at Dalhousie who does a lot of work to support teachers of children in their class with ADHD, and Margaret can help make that connection. So Margaret's name is there, and if you want to email her, I'll let you know, or I'll let her know to expect the email, and we'll do what we can to help make some connections.
Sorry, I might miss that. Where is the contact?
I put it in the chat. It's okay. margaret.david@novascotia.ca.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know if others have other suggestions, but that's a place to start.
I just wanted to mention something for Cassia. She said that her son is in immersion, and I just wanted to let her know that if she asks if they have a resource French teacher at her school, because some schools do have resource teachers focusing on French in some of the elementary school, just to make sure that contact your school to see if that's available.
Thank you so much. I do believe they actually have it. I mean, in terms of his academics, he doesn't really struggle. He's up to par at his grade level. It's mostly emotional regulation and like work in a group that is a struggle. But thank you so much for mentioning. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Because they can also provide like strategies on how to cope with certain emotions and things like that. And language and how to use the words, the proper words to express. Sometimes it's hard to express your feelings when you're emotional. So
yeah,
just
that's a really great idea. Thank you so much.
No problem.
I think we have a new question. Is there a clinic like ENBI for autism for kids with other disabilities?
I'm not sure which, you mean at the IWK clinic?
I think Monica is asking. Monica, can you explain?
No, I don't know if you have heard about ENBI. It's like a clinic support that here is in Bayers Road. But if your kid has autism, you go directly to that. I don't know if it's called clinic, it's a support, but it's just for kids with autism. Is there sort of a facility like that for kids with another disability, name it ADHD or global developmental delay?
Yeah. So, and for school age children, Monica?
Yes.
For school. So depending on the disability, there isn't right now an ADHD association. There used to be, but there are others. For example, well, as you mentioned, autism, but then also Nova Scotia Inclusion, which was formerly Association for Community Living. There's Club Inclusion. So there are some out there, and maybe what I can do is connect with Peru to give, if you're looking specifically for organizations for parents that are supporting children with disabilities.
Yes.
We can, okay, so I'll pull that together to Peru. I have to sign off on the call now, but I'll connect with Peru and Karen on anything else that comes up afterwards. And like I said, don't ever hesitate to email. My email's there in the chat. So thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the day. And thanks for including me on in the forum.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So is there any other questions? Maria Jose is going away, so I am just one thing is to let everyone know that all the this form is recorded, so we are going to go back to collect everything and trying to put this online for view for everyone. Also, we are trying to make some translations versions with all the PPTs, and we'll put questions and answers into text format and put that in on our INWA website and also Facebook and anywhere. We also thinking about put the clips onto YouTube, so we'll let everyone know. Also for everyone that registered in here, you're going to have an email with the requested email contact list and some the PPT as attachment. So we'll do all those, so don't worry. Hi, Maria Jose. Welcome back. It's yours. You're mute.
Okay, I'm back and I was mute. I believe Monica has raised her hand.
Yes. I have a comment for Cassia, where she commented that her son is struggling at school because of some emotional regulation, dysregulation, and social interactions. And my son actually presents with the same situation right now. He does not have an EPA. He doesn't have an EPA in his group. Actually, what Annie was mentioning, that the EPAs are usually allocated to the classroom. Is not right now, currently is not one-on-one support because they have so many children that require support. So they allocate an EPA per classroom. But my son hasn't had an EPA in his classroom, I don't know, for two years, I believe. But when I spoke to the teacher about his struggles, emotional regulation and social interactions, So they hired a counselor, a school counselor, and so they invited the counselor to the discussion with us. And what they're doing right now is that this counselor is meeting with my son and is providing a social group. So what she does is that she includes in this social group positive role models for my son to interact with. So they hold these meetings on Mondays, and it's a small meeting where there is my son and some 2 or 3 other children, which are going to positively model for him social interactions and emotional regulation. So that's what they've been doing. The counselor of the school, that's what they've been doing to alleviate the situation where he does not have an EPA right now. And did you mention that your school have a school counselor, and have you spoken to the school counselor about your child's situation, Kasia?
They thank you, Monica. They do have a counselor. I haven't spoken to the person directly. The teacher has been in touch, and I think the counselor came in and had a couple presentations to the whole class.
Yes.
Also addressing Cuba's issues, but there hasn't been like one-on-one work, and that's a really good idea. I'll definitely take that path on. Thank you, Monica.
Yes, I'll tell you my experience, because just mentioned that sometimes they are so overworked, the school counselors. But when there is really a need for that, you can mention. I know that these services exist in the schools, and I know from other situations. And then it's good to come up with your own ideas, to be proactive and say, how about you set up a small social group? It's not a one-on-one support, but she's actually, or he's actually working with a group of people. Positive role modeling, and positive social interactions where he can learn. I mean, my child is an only child, so he doesn't have brothers and sisters to work out that development, right? So having these small social groups is really, really important for him to learn how to positively interact with others.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's very, very helpful. Thank you, Monica.
You're welcome.
And just to connect, what Monica just shared is what we call our tier 2 types of intervention. We talk about tier 1, tier 2, the MTSS. So that's tier 2.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
So I believe we are just about to wrap up. And I believe we have one more question before we wrap up by Achala. Do you want to?
So sorry, I was muted there for a minute. I'm back here. So the other question that we were looking at is what for the future sessions, what would you like to hear? What information would you like to hear or learn in the future sessions? So that was the question. And if anybody wanted to comment or questions or express their views, welcome to.
Also, please feel free to put it in the chat as well, right, Achala?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have one question here. Is any free adult learning programs?
What was the question again?
So, is there any free adult learning programs? Yeah, I think ISANS, YMCA all provide those adult learning programs. Like ISANS is the best, and YMCA to contact with. They have a full program for all kinds of requests, and they have support.
Yeah, all YMCA programs are free, funded by the IRCC. And yeah, so they're free for all new immigrants who are permanent residents to Canada.
And there's also the public libraries as well. And also, if you wanted to get your high school diploma, adult high school diploma, there's the Nova Scotia School for Adult Learning. So there are community organizations that provide adult literacy classes to walk towards your high school diploma program. So there's Nova Scotia Community College, which is part of that as well. Just wanted to mention that.
Yes, and also the Nova Scotia Learning Network, which is mainly directed to academic education. But also I know this because I have volunteered myself to their program for English as an additional language with them. So if we have an immigrant whose first language is not English, they can also attain the courses having a tutor that will provide help with English. So that's the Nova Scotia Learning Program, and they have different places. For example, in Dartmouth, we have one. In Tacoma Drive, there is one place. In Halifax, they have the Halifax Learning Network over Halifax as well. So you can contact them and inquire about their programs.
Well, thank you so very much for everybody for participating. I want to thank particularly Monica Romero, also Annie for being here, Paru, Karen, and the whole sorry, the word just escaped my mind, and the whole advisory group for their commitment, for their time and dedication to bring this forum to us.